Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
This week, Marine General said that we will be following up on a question that was raised, that we would be there 5 to 10 years, and that we have to educate the American people about the needs to support to be there. I wonder what you think about that.
I don't think anyone knows how long we'll be there. What is instructive to me, and there are a lot of definitions of what does be there mean. I'll talk specifically to Iraq. Right now, we're at 50,000 in Iraq. We've said over the course of the last year and a half, we are going to achieve this goal of by the end of this month be at 50,000. We're a little below that today. We're on track, and the big issue in Iraq is the stand-up of the new government, and we eagerly await that to happen. And I'm increasingly concerned that it hasn't happened. And a lot of people working hard on it. We look to a long-term relationship with Iraq, a strategic partnership like we have with many other countries. And we think there are great opportunities with respect to that. But we can't really pound out the eaches of that until we have a government to deal with. Under the current agreement we have with them, which was forged a couple of years ago, we'll have all of our military forces, out of Iraq by the end of 2011. Whether that happens or not, I don't know, and that's also that will also be a decision that in terms of what kind of forces, if any, would be there and how long they would be there, and I just don't know the answer to that. I think that President Karzai's goal in Afghanistan, an aspirational goal of having them lead them be in the lead for their security in 2014 is about right. It is exactly right. I don't know. We live in a time where timetables are pretty difficult to pin down and predict. There's no question about that. The date of July 2011 is not a date we're going to turn off the lights and head for the exits at all. Vice President Biden said it could be as few as 2,000 forces. We don't know, quite frankly, because we don't know what the conditions will be. We're starting to see indications that it's moving in the right direction. We're starting to see an enemy which is getting tired. That doesn't mean that they are putting down their arms. This, as I indicated, this is a tough year, and it's going to be tough. In the long run, from my perspective, this is an area of the world that is directly tied to our national security interests. And it's not just about Afghanistan, nor is it just about Pakistan. It is about the region. It's a very dangerous region. It houses a very dangerous threat that just isn't going to go away by wishing it away. And we're working hard to absolutely put it on its heels so that it can't do what it aspirationally wants to do.
Admiral, in the run-up to the Iraq War, we were given quite a rosy scenario. 3 months, few troops, and then we're out. As a father of a Marine who was killed in Iraq, 26 months after we invaded, I want to ask you a question about what is the possible worst-case scenario should we come into conflict, however, with Iran? How many troops would be needed? How long would we be there? Any of that kind of thing. What would it do to our economy? This is very important now that we understand all of this in a way that we didn't understand in 2002, 2003.
Well, I have tried to be as clear as I could be with respect to the potential consequences of a conflict with Iran. I believe that their achieving a nuclear weapons capability would be incredibly destabilizing in a part of the world that doesn't have a lot of stability as we speak. We've got friends, allies there who are equally concerned about that. It is seen from a country that we are very close to in Israel, and that is Israel, if they achieve that capability. In Israel, it is seen as an existential threat. And the exact definition of that word is really important. And if you've been to Israel, you know that is how it is seen there. And what I worry about in addition to achieving that are things like the consequences of that, the known consequences of that, which could be an arms race in the Middle East, where other countries now desire to provide for their own security by achieving that capability as well. The proliferation of nuclear weapons technology, consistent with the support of organizations like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and other terrorist organizations that Iran supports today, and certainly from what I can see will do in the future. And I also worry about the unintended consequences of them getting that capability that I don't know, which are very difficult to predict. At the same time, I think striking Iran has potentially enormously destabilizing effects in the region as well. Some of the consequences, the cost of oil would be one, would be known. How long does it last? I don't know. The unintended consequences of that are not known, except I know there will be some, and they will have a significant effect. So I talk about this space between those two outcomes as a very narrow space where President Obama and this administration are pushing hard for engagement, for dialogue on sanctions to influence the Iranians, with whom we have no relationship and have not had since 1979, to make responsible decisions for their own future and essentially view the outcome of either one of those as devastating for their own country, their own leadership, and recognize that a solution other than those two is much better off for them. How does that come out? I don't know, but I am a big supporter and hopeful that in that small space we will press hard, because among other things, I certainly am not anxious to start a third conflict in that part of the world. Doesn't mean, nor should anybody think, that I don't have the reserve capacity to carry out the orders of the President should we ever get to that kind of requirement there or somewhere else. That said, I'm stretched pretty thin right now, given the two conflicts that I have been in and continue to sustain.
Admiral, my name is Craig Marbany, and it's an honor and privilege to have you here at our City Club. It's oftentimes, and we're familiar, if I can bring it back to your topic of your talk for a moment, it's oftentimes, and many of us have seen those great television commercials of the young vet who comes into the community alone and is brought back into the community by a much more experienced vet. But let's talk, if you will, about the oftentimes targeted defense budget, which is oftentimes a subject of discussion for cuts. But let's talk about its impact on the economies of regions such as this and here in northeastern Ohio. If you could address its impact on the manufacturing and job sector so that those jobs and manufacturing positions can flourish so that we can bring these young vets back into our culture and our society and our community.
Let me answer that really with two lines of thought. First of all, that young vet who does return, if I were to pick a gold standard, at least the current one, I've seen out there in some communities and some organizations, they welcome that veteran and his or her family back with a host of support, whether it's education, training, rehabilitation, physical, mental, medical, housing, here's how you transition back. And every single family, every single individual is going to be different. And so I am anxious to, at least that's a model that I have seen work. My challenge, or our challenge, not mine, but ours is to scale that